All right. Parshas Tazria and also Parshas Hachodesh. So what's interesting is this year, Parshas Hachodesh, which is the Parsha, it's the Shabbos right before Rosh Chodesh. We read these four Parshias, right, back to back. First, we have, right, Shkolim, Zachar, Para, and then Hachodesh, which is about the establishment of the new month, which is Chodesh Nisan, which is the Chodesh of Nisan, which this Shabbos, first of all, it happens to be Parshas Hachodesh, but it's also Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So I'm going to get into the Sikha. This is Shabbos Parshas Hachodesh. Is Chal Lefa'amim Azoivi Haitike Yar b'Shabbos Parshas Tazria. The Shabbos, that is the Shabbos that we read Hachodesh, sometimes or often it happens like this year, the year that the Rebbe wrote the Sikha, but it happens to also be this year, in Parshas Tazria, which is the Parsha from this week. So alle in Yonasan from Torah Zayna B'diuk. Everything in the Torah is specific, right? There's nothing is by accident. It's from them Gufa, was the beide Parshi is kommen zusammen, is muchach as they haben zwischen sich eine Kura Meshutefes. The fact that they happen to coincide is a proof that there's an underlying theme. There's a common denominator between the two, between Hachodesh and Tazria. Sorry about the honking. Because if it wasn't the case that there was a common denominator between the two, it's Torah's emes. The Torah is truth, and it wouldn't ever put the two together. It never would happen. So Bashkafar Rishayna is that other ice. As nit nor haben ze nit kein nakuda mishutefes. Nor adrabas is zayde gar and yonim hachim zemizeh. So not only, if we were to look at it at face value, right, does it seem like they don't necessarily have anything in common, but even more than that, it seems like there's nothing in common, that there could seem like to be completely opposite, actually. So Parshas Hachodesh, ver angerufen Hashem dem pasuk. So Parshas Hachodesh is called Parshas Hachodesh based on the pasuk. Hachodesh hazeh lachem reish chadashim. It says Hachodesh hazeh, this month will be for you the head of months. Okay, that's Chodesh Nisan, the month of Nisan, which is was in Yana is Chodesh HaGeula, which is the month of our redemption. Right, Hashem took us out of Egypt in the month of Nisan. So first he tells us about the calendar and about establishing Nisan as the head of the months, and then we're up out of there. So he says, "Vies kumt in ganzem elamayla kedivre razal." The fact that this redemption that occurred happened completely from Hashem, right? It says that the Yidden were so deep in tuma, in spiritual unholiness, that we weren't zeicha to be redeemed. We didn't earn the redemption. The redemption happened all on Hashem's accord, right? As if them get called it says on this that it says that the voice of my beloved comes. The fact that it's saying comes, meaning is completely coming from that side, meaning it comes from Hashem, my beloved being Hashem, and the voice of Hashem, meaning this redemption, this relationship that occurred through this redemption happened completely on Hashem's accord. Unachmer, is ba in an eifen fun medalig, diluk alakates, bisrusa de laela. It came by way of skipping, a leap, that Hashem completely skips past the whole order of what would normally take place. We, maybe we earn it or we deserve it. And no, it came from Hashem. So because it came directly from Hashem, it came direct. Hashem leapt from his holy place, comes down here all the way. This Rusa de la Ela, meaning it came from above. The impetus for this interaction between us and Hashem came completely from Hashem. Was der verwert the ganze Parsha angerufen Parshas Hachodesh, Hagam as nar ein pasuk, in Anheiv von der Kriya reden wegen Hachodesh. The fact that we call it Parshas Hachodesh is because of this one pasuk, the one verse that says the Hachodesh hazeh lachem, that this month will be the head of the months, right? This is why we refer to it as Parshas Hachodesh, but it's only one pasuk, it's only one verse. Und der Iberike Psukim, and the rest of the verses that come after this, Reden wegen the dinim from Karban Pesach, are all related to the sacrifices for Pesach, for Passover, that we take from, so we go from this Geula, this month of redemption. He's telling us now is the head of the month, and then the reason for all of this interaction is Hashem's taking us out of Egypt and bring the Karban Pesach, right? This is what's going to happen, okay? But is also Val he and Hashenis. So this is really one and the same thing, right? That Karban Pesach is Al Shem, the Pesach Hashem, that Hashem skipped, or he passed over, or he passed over, meaning he passed over the Yittins, the houses, and the whole thing. So was weiß the Geula was kommt bedilug in ganzem Elamayla, that he passed over the fact that we weren't deserving, we weren't zeicha to be redeemed or anything of that, but Hashem skipped, he passed over all of that and just took us out. This came completely from Hashem. Nigla Alehem Melech Malchei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu V'Ga'olam, that Hashem was revealed, the King of all kings was revealed, and he redeemed us. Und das ist der Zeichen von Hachodesh Nisan. Was ist der Hachodesh HaGeula? And this is the purpose, this is the whole content of Hachodesh that we're reading. Parshas Hachodesh is about Hachodesh Nisan, the month of Nisan, which is the month of our redemption, right? So Masha Enkin, the Teichen from Tazria, Loshen Nekeva. Now we look at the Parsha itself, the Torah portion of Tazria, which is in the feminine. V'er zog fardem isha ki, right? When it says Tazria, it starts isha ki Tazria, and this is a woman who gives birth and she brings the sacrifices. And it's a whole. That's what this parsha is about. So Vida Alter Rebbe is mefarish the maimer ish mazria tchilas yeledes nekeva, isha mazras tchila yeledes zacher. So there's a medrash that describes this and says Tazria is to sow, right, or to plant. So it says in the medrash that in the union between a man and a woman, if the man contributes to this union first, then the child will be a girl. And if the woman contributes first, gives her contribution first, then the child will be a boy. Okay. As ish ve'isha zan merames eif HaKadosh Baruch Hu Knesset Yisrael. And the Alter Rebbe explains that this is a connection, really, the man represents Hashem, and the woman in this relationship, in this interaction, represents the Jewish people. Und wenn ish mazriya tchila. Now, when the man contributes first, the man is the first in this interaction. The Eibishter is ma'eder tchila yidin oif avodas Hashem is yeledes nekeva. The aveda is nitkein bas kayama azoivi noshim vos daitin kala. It says that when the man is the impetus for this interaction, so when Hashem is the influence for this interaction, then the relationship that occurs, that's born from this, is by way of a girl, a feminine, a girl child, a baby girl. And what does this mean? So it says that this is not as enduring. This doesn't endure. This doesn't sustain like when there's a boy, when it's a boy child, spiritually speaking, is what this is referring to. Now, and he says in the Gemara that Nashim was daitin kala, that the das, meaning the intellectual property that causes the kind of the integration of a thought or a concept or an idea into the individual, right? To really internalize a thought. Now, it's interesting. There was a study that looks at the brain, I guess, the process that goes on in the brain between a man between men and women. And one of the things they said that men are more eye-hand coordination. It's front and back of the brain working together. So spatial awareness and action. And women are left and right. And they go back and forth, left and right, which is analysis and intuition, and this back and forth. So as a result, they showed 100 men and women different, they're called life colors, meaning things that depicted certain things. And as a result of men being more spatial and action, the information is compartmentalized much quicker. We see information and then boom, it gets compartmentalized, and then we, make decisions based on that information. Whereas because women have this analysis and intuition, that process of decision based on given information or based on an observation takes longer and can change, right? Because of empathy, basically. This is what happens, that one becomes engrossed into the situation or into what they're observing, and therefore the decision can change, or the understanding or the internalization of what's being observed can shift because it is going through a process. Whereas a man sees it, makes the decision, and then goes accordingly, right? So as a result, this is the idea that a woman's, that the nashim, so when it's a girl, so if the male is the one, the impetus in this interaction, the resulting relationship is female, that means it's not enduring. It goes through a process, and therefore it can change. But then aber isha mazras tchila, but however, when the woman, meaning the people, are the impetus to this interaction, the aveda height sich on fulis de latata, when the impetus comes from below, Danya let is zachar. The aveda is a bas kayama. So then the child, meaning the relationship that is born from this, is masculine, which has this brain that sustains. The observation happens, the thought sticks, and it's internalized, and then it's it. It's locked in. So that's like the idea of this almost stubborn way of being, that if the woman, meaning us, the feminine energy, has come to the decision, that means the process of the back and forth of analysis and intuition and all that has already finished. It's already completed, and now we're at decision mode, and therefore we're locked in. So when we, the people, which as we see, people are, constantly changing and shifting, and we develop and whatnot, that as that is done, and we have now come to the decision, and we are the impetus to this interaction, then what's born from that, the relationship born from that, is male. Okay. So was the fizeh weiß the teichen from Pashas Isha ki Tazria. So we can see from this that the content of Isha ki Tazria, the parsha, that is when a woman sows, meaning a woman is the impetus, right? Then that's from below above, meaning the people working towards Hashem, is not like a Hachodesh, which was completely from above, right? Hashem is the impetus in that interaction, but Tazria is us being the impetus in that interaction. So Hachodesh is Elechem, Reish Chadashim Rishon Hu Lechem, Lechatche Ashana, Zainada, Kama Pirushim Imem. So Hachodesh is Elechem, the pasuk goes, Hachodesh is Elechem, Reish Chadashim Rishon Hu Lechem Lechatche Ashana, that this month will be the head of the months of the year. And on this pasuk, there are several commentaries, and among them, we have pshat, the basic understanding, and we also have medrash. We have the explanation, like a deeper layer of understanding, more analytical. So al derech pshat, based on the simple understanding, that Even Ezra is masber dem inyan fun Hachodesh un shana. That the Even Ezra, he points out, he explains two ideas: Hachodesh, meaning month, and shana, year. Okay, Matzad mahalach halavana is b'chlal nita to get it from shana. And based on the movement of the moon, we see no connection to year, right? We have no way of noting changes in the year based on the moon. Ein l'lavana shana klal. As it says, there's no relevance to the year in the moon. Valin dem sivuv halavana is kentiknor the uptel fun chadashim. We do, however, see in the motion of the moon, we see the development of the month, right? That every month has 29 days and a half and two parts of an hour and 73 chalakim, which is, I think it's like shorter than seconds. So kumfara fuller sivu from the lavana gambenagel amat of achama biyachas the aretz was kum the meiler lavana mechadesh. So we see that from a full moon, we see in this 29-day period and some change, in that period, we see the that it comes back to a full, it comes back to the full cycle. And even in relation to where the sun is placed, it's based on the moon that we see the birth of the new moon when the moon cycles to a new month, right? The Hachodesh means new, right? So this aber nita in the Mahalach Halavana came prat was all up till in ein Yar von Zweiten. However, in the cycle of the moon, we don't see any kind of indication of the change in year from one year to another. So leidach gisa, on the other hand, however, mitzad shemesh is nita the sug azman from chadashim. But the opposite is the case when it comes to the sun. When it comes to the sun, we don't see any kind of indication on the months. As it says, ein l'shemesh chodesh kla, that there's no relation to the moon or to the month as it pertains to the sun. So the sivuv hashnasi from shemesh is shin samich hey yain v'shei shos be'erech, und the sivuv zayin is ba'efen as a shaf the dalet kufas hashana. But the cycle of the sun is 365 days and 6 hours, and that cycle creates the 4 seasons that let us know when a new year is starting. So we see through the sun the change that indicates a new year, right? The cycle of the year. But we don't see any kind of boundaries that would let us know when it's a new month. So on the pasuk, and this verse that this month will be the head of months, is described is referring to the counting of the months. That the month, the counting of the month, is relevant to the year, a year based on the moon, right? But Yisrael, the Yisrael counts the month. The Jewish people count these months. As is Chodesh on from Chodesh Rishon, Chodesh Nisan, Masha Enkin the Rosh Hashanah L'Shanim was a Shayach from Shemesh is from Tishrei. So the head of this counting of months, this development, starts in Nisan, right? But as it pertains to the year, the yearly cycle, the head of those months is Tishrei. So the head of the year is in Tishrei, and the head of the months is in Nisan. Okay, that's the pshat. Now, derech hamedrash, oikum pasuk, hachodesh is elechem. Now, on a deeper meaning, Zol Chazal, the sages say, Misha Bachar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ba'elamai Kava Ba'Rosh Chadashim V'Shanim, Uchshabachar B'Yakov V'Vonav Kava Ba'Rosh Chadashim Shaga'ula, or Rosh Chodesh Shaga'ula rather. So, at the time that Hashem chose His world, He established ahead of the months and the years, and at the time that He chose Yaakov and his sons, meaning the Jewish people, He established a head of the Geula, a Rosh Chodesh, meaning a head of the month that is related to Geula, redemption. So is Masbir the Baal HaKedah. There's a sefer called the Hachodesh, I think it's the Hachodesh Yitzchak this is a reference to. So the Chiluk Tzvishen Bachar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ba'elamai, the difference between Hashem choosing His world, Bachar B'Yakov Uvanav, and Hashem choosing the Jewish people, Bachar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ba'elamai, Hashem choosing His world, made down Hagativis versus eingestellt geworden in the Bria. He's describing Hashem creating the nature or the order, the laws of nature that govern the world, the creation. Und der Reish von der Anhage is Chodesh Tishrei, and the head of this moment, or this I guess the way that this works, the way of nature, is Tishrei, the month of Tishrei, right? So Rosh Hashanah is related to the nature, the order of nature, the laws of nature. Bachar b'Yaakov uvanav, but the choosing of Yaakov and his sons, Meindan Haganisis, is a reference to the ways of miracles, right? The Shidur Ateva, right? The shattering, or the way that miracles override nature. Was the Eibishter tut zu lieb Yidden, Yaakov uvanav, und der Rosh von der Anhage is Hachodesh Zelachem, Chodesh Nisan, right? That Hashem created or chose the Jewish people, Yaakov and his sons, and the impetus, the moment for that, the Rosh, the head of the months that is associated with that choice, which is associated with miracles, is the month of Nisan. So alle Perusha Rizal auf demselben Pasuk oder in haben a Kisher zwischen sich. So all the commentaries that you see in relation to a single verse or a concept altogether have within them a connection. There's a kisher, there's a kesher, there's a tie between them. And this is also the case in our concept. The zwei in Yonam Hanal, the chiluk zwischen Shnas Chama und Shnas Lavana, und the chiluk zwischen Hanagativis and Haganisis, was in Havchim. The fact that we see the difference between the yearly cycle, the cycle of the sun, and then the cycle of the moon, which is monthly, that seem completely opposite. And also before that, as we described, the difference between Hachodesh, which is Hashem being the impetus for that interaction, and Tazria, which is us, the Sarusa Delatata, the awakening or the arousal from below, being completely opposite. So these two things that seem opposite, as we mentioned before, have something in common, but also we can see the Zainen Farbunden Zeim Zeh, that they're connected even with themselves. So the Anhagas Ateva, the way of nature, is the Anhaga versus Lo Yesh Baisu. There's no deviation. With nature, nature is ordered, right? There's an order to nature. Tzmidis onashinoi, it's constant when there's no change. There's no change to nature. Und das ist bedema zum Ohr mahalach hashemish, was in ihm is nitto kein shinuyim. And we see this, as we said, the sun, the yearly cycle of the sun is what's related to nature, as moon is related to miracles. And we see the nature, that the fact that nature is unchanging, the sun also is unchanging. Comes up, goes down, looks the same every time. Right? It says, was das is al derech von the Pirush in Shana. And it's also based on the explanation of the word Shana, which means year, von Lashon Mishnah. The Shana comes from the word Mishnah, which means to repeat. It says, the Zelba Mahalach HaShemesh was chazert sich iber nachama, that it completely, it repeats, it cycles and it repeats the sun. It's the same. Masha ein kain da an Haganisis is an inyan fun chiddush, but a miracle is something new, a chiddush, right? The word chiddush means something new, a revelation. So was the fa'amim is the eibush to meshaded dan haga teva lemeshech zman. So sometimes we see that Hashem will override nature or break nature momentarily in order to basically create a miracle. This is what a miracle is. This overriding of nature. Und das ist bedeutet zu der Levana, was ihr steht in Shinuyim miyom liyom, und ihr wird nis Chadesh jeder Chodesh von Lashon Chiddush. And we see this associated with the moon, right? Because the moon is different every day. Every time we see the moon, every day, it looks different. It's developing, it waxes, it wanes, and the whole thing. And then every month is born anew, right? Which is a concept of Chiddush, something new. The month Chiddush, right? And I'm sure y'all were able to see that. So Medarv Aber Verstehen. So we have to understand something else. Aleph. First, in Pasuk Shtei and Svei and Yonim, there's two concepts here. Hachodesh Zelachem Rosh Chadashim, that this month is the head of the months. And also it goes on to say, Rishon Hu Lechem L'Chadshe Hashana, right? That this is the first of the months of the year. So even as it pertains to the month, or the months, the moon, right? Hachodesh Zelachem, this month, it's still a reference to the fact that it's now going to the year. It's associated with the year. As Chodesh Nisan is nitnor the Rosh Chadashim. That Rosh Chodesh Nisan is not just the head of the months, nor oich the Rishon l'Chadshe Shana, but it's also associated, not just associated with, it's the head of the year. So it's nit moving. This doesn't make sense. Vibam as da redt sich wegen Inyan HaChodesh, was ist verbunden mit der Levana, und ein Levana Shana klar, ist wie sagt man, as Nisan ist der Rishon, euch bescheiches zu Inyan Chadshe Shana. since we said that a Hachodesh, that the month is connected with Hachodesh, right? Is connected with Levana, the moon. And we said previously that there's no connection to year as it pertains to the moon, right? Ain leLevana on a cloud. So how can we say that Nisan, which is associated with Hachodesh, is also the head of the years, Chodshei Hashana? And Beis, the second question, Le'idach Gisa, on the other hand, Oich Mishabachar HaKadosh Baruch Hu B'Ai Lamai. Also, since Hashem chose his world, Vos is Shaykh to Tishrei, which is connected to Tishrei, der month nit nor kava by Shanim, nor Oich Roshei Chadashim. That it says is not only is it calculated in years, but also it says Roshei Chadashim. It says Roshei Chadashim v'Shanim. It says the heads of the months, right, and the years. That's what it said in relation to Hashem choosing his world. So l'choira, seemingly, vi kumt in der bria teva in inyan fun Hachodesh, which is Nes. How can we see in the creation itself a concept of Hachodesh, of month, Hachodesh? Obviously, when Hashem created the world, there was the months and also years, right? So how can we say these two things coexist at the same time? One, that the moon is only associated with months and miracle and not with year, and vice versa, that the year is only associated with nature and year in the set order of nature, but not also months and therefore miracles. It's a good question, obviously. So Muzman Zagan, we have to say that as Chotsh B'chlalis is Tishrei verbunden mit Teva, Shana, und Nisan mit Nes, Hachodesh, which is Hachodesh. So since we have to say that even though in generally speaking, Tishrei is connected with nature because of year, Rosh Hashanah is in Tishrei, Nisan with miracle is connected with miracle, Hachodesh is Elechem, is aber da hiskalulus zwischen sei. There is still like a coming together, a general idea here that they're connected, they come together. Zwischen sei, euch in the Bria Gufa, right? Also in the creation itself, Eider Bacher B'Yaakov Uvanov is done in Yifulnes, Rosh Hachodesh. Even before the choosing of Yaakov and the Jewish people, there already existed a concept of miracle. And also, on the other hand, we could say the Eiftu from Bacher B'Yaakov Uvanov dricht sich ois nit nur in Anhagas Nisis, that the choosing of Yaakov and the Jewish people expresses not only the nature of miracles or the way of miracles, which is connected to Hachodesh, a month, nor oich, but also in the Shinui was durch them in the Anhagativis Shana, but also in the changes that occur and result that results in a change of nature or the continuation of the years. So das zu verstehen, in order to explain this, darf man früher mevarer sein, dem Teichen und Kavana Pnimis in the zwei Anhagas. First, we have to explain the reason for these two modes of existence, Teva und Nes, nature and miracle. Was beide seine neitig zu ausführen Kavanas Abria und megala sein Gedulasa Yisbarach. The whole purpose for creation is to highlight the greatness of Hashem. So since nature is a part of creation, and since miracles are also a different aspect of creation, it's clear that they both have to have the same purpose, which is to fulfill the intention of all creation, which is to reveal and to highlight the greatness of Hashem. Nor the chiluk zwischen ze is, so therefore it's closer to look at the difference between the two. The tachlis von Hanhaga Nisis is to megala sein den bli gvul von Elokus. The purpose of miracles is to highlight the limitless nature of Hashem, the infinite nature of Hashem, right? Of godliness. Wie der Eibishter is in ganzen Heche von Welt, how Hashem is completely higher than the world, than all of creation. Und das wird der Herr in Welt durch Bittel von ihr Metzias. And this is made apparent, right? This is sensed in the world through the nullification of the existence of the world. Breaking nature is the way you see a miracle. He shows a miracle by breaking nature. And by seeing that nature broke for something greater, we are now privy to this fact that Hashem is greater than nature. That's a miracle. That's the purpose of a miracle. The nes is mashadid the ma'arches ateva, that miracles break the rules of nature. Was bavayis viteva is nit teifes makom legabed and bli gvul von elakus, that anything that exists in nature is really insignificant in comparison to Hashem, or from the perspective of Hashem, right? So the tachlis von Hanhaga Tivis is to megala sein, wie der Eibishter is sich mislabish in Welt, azoi as eich de Metzias von Welt is meyuchad mit den Eibishter. So on the other hand, right, we can point out, we just talked about the reason or the purpose for the creation of miracles. And now to look at nature, we see that also the purpose of creating nature is to highlight the fact that Hashem is enclosed within nature, within the world, in such a way that even the Metzias, the existence of the world, is one with Hashem. That even the way of nature, right, is really governed, is in a state of being governed by Hashem, both miracles and nature. So Vibad as the Welt is Bashafen Gevara Bishvil HaTorah Bishvil Yisrael. The world was created for the purpose of Torah, which means it was created for the purpose of the Jewish people, as we are the ones who fulfill the Torah. Muslims Zogan, we have to say, as outs versus da in the Bria is abhängig in the Avodah von Yidden. Then we have to say, since the whole purpose of creation was for the Torah and for the fulfillment of the Torah by the Jewish people, then we have to say that everything in the world, everything in existence, both in nature and spiritually, is completely dependent on the relationship between the Jewish people, on the work that we do, right? Und erfun is verstandig, and therefore we can understand as nit nur da Hachodesh, not only the way of miracle, which is connected to Hashem choosing us, the Jewish people, is talui in Avodas Yisrael. Obviously, the way of miracles is completely dependent on the Jewish people, as these miracles, the whole concept, Hachodesh, everything came about because of Hashem choosing the Jewish people. So for sure that the way of miracles is dependent on our service, on our serving Hashem. But even Hashem choosing His world and therefore nature, the Hanhagativis, is talui in Avodas Yisrael, is also dependent on the Jewish people. Nor jede von der Anhagas is abhängig in der Avodas Adam versus Dugmasa. Therefore, we see that each of these two ways of existence, these two modes of existence, are completely dependent on the service of Yidden, on the service of the Jewish people, each one paralleling its mode, right? So each way of service has its associated mode of existence. So we serve Hashem in a way of miracle that affects the way of miracles. We serve Hashem in a way of nature that affects the way of nature. So all of creation, both of these pillars are dependent on the service of the Jewish people, or the way we serve Hashem. It's a big responsibility, right? The whole idea of being chosen, the chosen people, is that we were chosen, and now we have a responsibility because of that being chosen. So was Eifane is Hashem telling sich, but this service divides basically b'chlolos in zwei sugim, in two different approaches, right? So by Yidden darf sein the tanua von Kabbalah's ol in Mesiras Nefesh. A person has to incorporate within themselves the idea of accepting the yoke of heaven and complete self-sacrifice to the point that you're willing to give your life for Hashem. So dienen dem Eibishter nit mitzad sein Verstand und Regesh. That leads to the idea of doing things for Hashem, not based on my understanding or what I think or how I feel about it, but doing it because Hashem said so. Nor folgen dem Ratzon ha'elyon mit bittul, right? Obeying Hashem's will because it's Hashem's will. Ubemele is eine Veda, nicht kein gemustene Leit de Medidas Vagbalas von sein Metzias. I'm a limited being, right? It's better to have to go beyond that, as we talked about last week, going beyond your limitations in order to serve Hashem in a limitless way. You can't do that if you're basing everything based on your understanding, your limited understanding and your feelings, and so you have to incorporate within yourself this mode of serving Hashem beyond your nature. Kabbalah's oil, accepting the yoke, and Mesiras Nefesh, that you give your life for it. And this avoida, this type of serving Hashem, activates essentially, awakens or influences the way of miracles. Remember we said before that the miracle is seeing the nullification of nature. Therefore, when a person nullifies themselves, nullifies their nature, they're in a sense activating this higher realm, which is what Nesed, a miracle, is breaking yourself, just like miracles break nature. So when you activate that part of yourself, you're creating an influence that allows for the ways of miracles to continue in this world. However, a person also has to incorporate their metzias, right? Your being. Kol levavcha kol nafshecha, right? It says in Be'avta, with all your heart and with all your soul. Sein durchgenommen mit avodas Hashem, und der Rebbe darf mekayem sein Torah mitzvos nicht nur mit Kabbalas oil, nor euch mit Verstand und Gefühl. Now, a person has to not only serve Hashem in this place of Kabbalah's oil and Mesiras Nefesh, you give yourself up for it, but also with your conscious self, with your thoughts, with your reasoning, with your understanding and your feelings and emotions, right? Und in dem Eifen HaAvoda is abhängig dan Hagativis. And this incorporates the fact that you're using your metzias, your nature, to serve Hashem, creates or influences that Hashem should continue the existence of nature. So that type of service, that model of service, exists in a way that it influences the continuation of that mode, that associated mode of existence. Was vereinigt the Metzias von Welt mit Elokus, and this creates a way a reality that unites and creates a synthesis between nature, existence, the world, and godliness. It reminds me of the saying, find something worth dying for and live for it, right? See that your relationship with Hashem is one that you give your life for it, that it's above your reasoning and your understanding and your feelings and emotions, and then incorporate those aspects of yourself as well into that relationship. So the Tachlis HaKavanah, the purpose in this attention, is doch achtos ubeniden die dan, as es soll sein der Yichud von Nes und Teva. In general, everything is about unity, right? Unifications. Reb Zachariah over here learns Kabbalah, so you know about Yichudim, that by making these unifications in between the physical world and the spiritual world through our actions, through the things that we do. And so too, in our case, this applies to making a unification, a union, a fusion between miracle and nature, the way of nature. Das was Nes und Teva seine zwei besondere Hanagos, that they seem like two separate ways, these two separate modes. Is normatzad eires v'giluim. This is only as it pertains to the way it's materializes in this world, the way it's revealed in this world. That they come in two pillars. These are two pillars of existence, miracle and nature, and they never overlap. The pillar of the infinite is miracles, the pillar of miracles. And the pillar of the finite, right? In Anhagas Teva, that's the way of nature. So you have these two pillars, and the Avoda that's associated between these two pillars. He's going to come back to that. So mitzad yichelis ha'atzmus aber seinen bli gvul ungvul, nicht kein zwei kavid. nor ein inyan. However, in Hashem, when it comes to Hashem himself, there aren't two pillars. It's one thing. It's one existence. They're the same in Hashem's world. It's one concept. The Eistruk from Shleimusa, and this expresses his oneness, his completion. This is the as it says, Im Tomer sheyesh loy koyach bli gvul, ve'ein loy koyach b'gvul, ata mechaser shleimusa. If you say about Hashem that he's infinite, but you say that he can't possibly be finite, you're detracting from the greatness of Hashem. You're contracting from the completion of the complete understanding of Hashem. Right? The what is it called? The omnipotence paradox. The idea, can Hashem create a rock too big for him to, right? I'm sure you're familiar with this. So this is like this idea that you can't say that Hashem is infinite, but not finite. It's all the same to Hashem. Is the Eishruk from Yechavis Yisbarach. And this expresses the abilities of Hashem. Und der Riebe führt sich aus der Kavanas Abriya von Atzmus Yisbarach in dem Yichul von Es und Teva. Right? And this therefore leads to the realization that the intention of the world, of the creation from Hashem, is for the purpose of the union, the fusion, the synthesis between miracle and nature. And therefore we circle back to how that parallels our service to Hashem. It is also demanded upon us to incorporate, to create a union between these two these two models of service. Mesiras nefesh, right, self-sacrifice, Kabbalah's oil, accepting the yoke, Shalamayla Matam the Das, which is above our own reasoning and understanding of things. And also as it pertains to our abilities, our faculties, our mind, our emotions, our heart, all of that. So das wird aufgetan durch das Öderes von Etzem and Neshama, and this takes place. We're able to make this happen through the awakening of the essence of our soul, the deepest part of our soul, the Pintele Yid. Because just like we said by Atzmus, by Hashem himself, there's no pillars. It's all one thing. At the Etzem and Neshama, we're talking about Hashem. That is Hashem. So the same reality exists where there aren't two pillars. It also is one thing, right? Nik kain havchim. Not only is they're not opposites, nor adarabba, really the opposite. But they exist in one, as one thing. So So since we say that in essence and in its root, really, the nes, miracles, and teva, and nature are one inyan, is verstandig, we can understand that as euch arabkum in histalshelus in Welt, but as it pertains to the way it manifests in this world, as it comes down into the chain of existence in the world, it seems as it pertains to how things are revealed in our existence and even the higher worlds and the higher realms. It seems like they come down in a way as being two opposite things, two pillars that coincide, but they're parallel, they don't overlap. But in reality, we see that at the root, there are really just one thing. Und das drückt sich euch in dem, was in Teva Gufa is reingegeben geworden, die Tichuna von der Meile mit der Teva. Good comments of test. Okay. We can actually see that what's expressed in this, right? We can see that expressed in nature itself, we see that nature possesses features of miracle, of above nature. So within nature, by observing nature, we can see that nature itself contains within it features of what exists above nature, right? Aspects of above nature, as he's going to explain in the next sip. So and also on the other hand, the inyan hanes is verbunden euch mit der Hanagas Teva, and then later he's going to explain how the opposite is true, that within miracles you can see that there's a connection to the ways of nature, to the order of nature. So the beater in them, in the Hakara von Gedulasa Yisbarach and Anhagas Teva, seinen dort zwei Eifanen. as it pertains to the recognition of the greatness of Hashem through the basically by seeing it, the recognition of the greatness of Hashem in nature itself. There's two concepts. Durch his baininess in the Hachodesh Abriya, that through meditating on the way of nature, on the way of creation. Hiluch HaMazala is by looking at the stars and the orbits of everything like that. Kuntmen to the Hakara as is Muzayin Abalabas Labirazu was führt on Midan Hagasateva. There has to be a balabas, there has to be a boss who's controlling who's behind everything, the one who's doing all of this. And you see in the world, in creation itself, that there's something so magnificent happening. There's got to be somebody up there controlling it. And the Rambam says regarding Abraham Avinu, our forefather, the first person to come to this realization, his chilashaited bedaita came into his mind. He looks up and he says, how are these things rotating and going through the orbit and all of this without something leading it to do that, right? A rock doesn't just float in the air. There has to be somebody through it. If you see a rock, you knew somebody threw it. It's impossible that these things could just be doing it on its own. The second way of seeing the greatness of Hashem through nature itself is durch his baininess in them, lo yesh baisu, by meditating on the fact that nature is unchanging, right? Heder Ashinoi, the absence of change, Fundan Hagas Hateva, is menmasig umakir, gives us the ability to understand and recognize as a Zah Heder Ashinoi Kenit Zain Mitzanat Nevrayim. This mode or method of being unchanging can't exist by the merit of created beings themselves. Because things we see all the time in nature, things are created and then they decay and then they die and then they stop existing. And there's a process, there's a method. Things are always changing in the world. Created beings are constantly changing. And also even the godliness that you would say is the underlying thing behind the created being itself. Obviously, that mode of godly revelation is one that allows for this being to change, right? Seeing nature, seeing aspects of creation that are unchanging, the only thing that is consistent and unchanging is Hashem, Ein Sof, right? Was ist reingegeben geworden in der Hachodesh Hateva, which is invested, this power of God that's invested in creation. That's where you can see within creation itself, even the highest concept of Hashem, right? Kumtois, as in Teva Gufa is da de l'mayla min Teva, the lo yishanisi fun Eitzav Baruch Hu, right? It says, Ani Hashem, I am Hashem, lo yishanisi, I don't change. So you can see in the nature itself, in existence, this idea that exists only by Hashem, existing also here in creation, which is higher than nature. As nature, as we said, goes through changes. So das is the beer in the Maimer Chazal, and this is the explanation on what Chazal, the sages, said. That when Hashem chose his world, he established the heads of the months and the years. Von Loshen Chazal is moving from this language, the specifics of the language, we can see and understand it. As da retzich nit wegen the matze von Olamai. It's not discussing the creation itself, right? The creation of the world, nor when the Eibishter is Beicher. It says, Misha, what does it say? Misha Bachar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when Hashem chose. So it's not when Hashem created the world, but when he chose his world in Welt, right? He was Beicher in the world, in Welt. Just like when he chose the Jewish people. The Bechira Davka is Kava by Rosh Chodashim V'Shonim. Ahisafa oif them was es is da in Eile Mitzad Atzmi Mitzad Abriya. This is wild to me because it's talking about the fact that in the choice of Hashem, in Hashem choosing a world which is created in a way of nature, the whole inyan of choice only really exists by Hashem. this is obviously like a kind of a lot to unpack because we're not going to like stay here on this topic. But the whole idea of free will, of choice, free choice, the idea of choice only really exists when you have two completely the same thing, two things that are completely the same, right? If one has an advantage over the other, it's no longer a choice. I'm obviously going with this option, right? So really the only real concept of choice exists by Hashem. So the fact that Hashem chose his world is an addition. It's a thing that's being added to the world that makes it related to Hashem, to the higher existence of Hashem. So it's not moving. Vibad as the Indian from Rosh Chodeshim Vashanim. Since the idea of the heads of the months and the years is vida Akeda is masber, the way that the Akeda is Yitzchak, I think, as we described earlier or discussed earlier, the way he explained is the Seder Tivi was the Eibishter hat eingestellt in Bria, the order of nature which Hashem established in creation is doch a chelek from the Bria Gufa is certainly a piece of the creation itself. Heint wie can men sagen, as das kommt davon, was Bacher HaKadosh Baruch Hu bei Lamai, a hechere ili is mitzad Bria. He's describing what I was saying about the fact that this choice goes to show that there is something associated higher than nature within nature and creation itself. Nor the beer in them. Rather, the explanation on this is mitzadim inyan from Bacher HaKadosh Baruch Hu ba'ay lamai. The idea of the choice that Hashem chose this world. Vos bechira amitis is nor in atzmusa yisbarach yedua is teva un hecher from teva ein inyan. The fact is, by showing that Hashem chose the world, his world, is showing that nature and above nature is really one thing. When therefore is in teva gufa faran the lamaila men teva the nitzchius from ani Hashem leishanisi. So in nature itself, we can see above nature and the eternal, this everlastingness that exists from the concept of ani Hashem leishanisi. I am Hashem and I'm unchanging. This is where this comes from. Und das meint mishabachar HaKadosh Baruch Hu bei Lama Kovet bei Rosh Chodeshim Vashanim, rather, that Hashem chose his world and he established the heads of the months and the year. This is the Nes Hachodesh, was is da in an Inyan from Teva. This is a month, the miracle, rather, Hachodesh, which is also established in the world, in nature. Right? When it says that Hashem chose nature, chose the world, he created or established heads of the months and year, and we talked about what the year was and what months were. So we see that even at that time he chose Nes as well. Was driksich ois in Inyan Hashana, and we see from the concept of the year Miloshin Mishnah, which is to repeat Kanasiv base, as we said before, the Inyan fun Heder Ashina. This is the idea of being unchanging. So Kashem vi in Teva Gufa is da de l'mayla min Teva. So just like in Teva itself, we see something that is above Teva, also above nature. Azoi is this Eichle Idach Gisa. Also, we see the same in the opposite. Down Haganisis is nit mugbal in dem Kafunes, was dricht eis dem Bliegwul von Elikus, right? It's kind of like an irony here that we can't say that miracles are limited, right? Are finite or like kind of bound in the kav of miracle, right? We say that there's these two pillars. We can't say that miracles are bound to being in the side of miracle. It's miracles. It's the whole idea of being a miracle is that it's bligvul. It's breaking the boundary. Nor in him is eich da the inyan was nes macht iber teva. As teva gufas of weisen eifan elakis. It's the fact that nature itself is being broken by miracles that show that the miracle is overturning nature. And that's what gives us the realization that we're experiencing a miracle, right? Und der Fahrer ist in Nisim bechlaf aran eich de sug Nisim was seine melubash angetan in Teva. We see that it's transforming and affecting nature. Was in ze seinen faran zwei tzavos. We see that here there's these two sides. Das ist a Nes, was ist Hecher von Teva, Punkt wie the Nisim was seine nit melubash in Teva. We see that there's Nes, there's a miracle which is higher than nature. just like we saw that miracles that are not, we're talking about before, miracles that are not clothed within nature. Und wie de psak din as min macht ditzelbe bracha. Also, we say the same bracha. It's a psak din, it's a halacha, we say the same bracha. Sha'asa nisim, that you create miracles. Sai b'Chanukah, when it comes to Chanukah, nesh she'enu melubash b'teva, right? The whole idea of Chanukah was that we saw revealed miracles, miracles that broke nature, the oil lasting, the war, all of these things were Hashem breaking nature to show us these miracles. But also Sai b'Purim, we also say this bracha by Purim, which nes melubash b'teva. Hashem's name is not mentioned once in the Megillah, right? The whole inyan of Purim is that clearly a miracle occurred. This is obviously a miracle that happened. However, there's no breaking of nature. Purim shows us that Hashem and miracles also are clothed within nature itself, right? So va'adrabah, Chazal zogen as davka eif the nisim hamelubashim b'teva ve'gazog eisin neflois levada. And even more so, really, the opposite is true. That Chazal say, the sages say, that specifically on the nisim, on the miracles that are clothed within nature, we say eisin neflois levada, that you alone create miracles. So over the nes gufa, however, the miracle itself, versus in ganzen hecher von teva, which is completely higher than the world, than nature, kumtara behislabshus in the darchei teva, comes down in a way that it is clothed within the ways, the ways of nature. Und tut oif as the anhagas ateva gufa soll sich führen kirutzene davka kegarzen biyad hachutzav. The idea that like an axe in the hand of the wood chopper, right? That it's a tool used by Hashem. Thus haste in the anhaga nisis shalamayla min ateva is oich da the tchuna fun teva. We see also there's the way of nature. While nit ner is a nes moishel of teva, but even as there is meshaded teva, nor durchen nes ver teva gufa, der heiben vis to lamayla min teva. So not only do miracles have to control or break nature, but also it can happen by way of elevating nature. That miracles just elevate the nature to a level of being higher than nature. V'yesh leimar, as das is the time, was Nisan is nit nor Rosh Chodeshim. This is the reason that we say Rosh, that Nisan is not only the head of months, nor oich rishon l'chodshei shana, but also the head of the months of the year, showing a connection to year also. While the tachlis from the anhaga nisis from Nisan is to ibamachen the anhaga tivis shana, is the purpose from the way of miracle of wait a second. While the tachlis, the purpose from the anhaga, the way of miracles from Nisan, from the month of Nisan, is in order to transform the way of nature, year. As eich in teva zal sich anheren as es ver gefiert von Nisan l'mayla min teva. That this way we can see that nature itself, we can recognize and have a sense of the fact that nature itself is led by miracles, right? Which is led by Nisan, which is higher than Teva, higher than nature. So al pi kol anal, so according to everything that we've said, vetmen euch verstehen, we can also understand the kesher zwischen Parshas Hachodesh and Parshas Tazria. Now we can understand the similarity between Parshas Hachodesh, or the connection between Parshas Hachodesh and Parshas Tazria. The chiluk zwischen Hachodesh and Tazria is al derech the chiluk zwischen Nes and Teva. The connection is the same as it is between Chodesh and Tazria as it is between miracle and nature. Hachodesh, the month, was weist of Gilul L'Mayla, which indicates to us a revelation from above. Kanal Sif Aleph, as we said in the beginning, is Hecher from Nivraim, is higher than creations. Azayvi Inyan Anes, just like miracles, right? Miracles are above nature. Tazria was weist auf avodas amata, and Tazria, planting or sowing, which shows a service or an avoda, the impetus for the interaction from below. Kanal Sham, also in the beginning, is verbunden mit Mitzias Ha'adam, is connected with the being of the person. Al derech inyan hateva, our nature, right? So unas Parshas Hachodesh is chal in Parshas Tazria, and sometimes we see that Chodesh falls in Tazria. Is this magish und der Mund, as seine Bepnimi is ein Inyan. And it comes to emphasize and to remind us that really it's one concept. Deep down, it's one concept. Und das wird sein Begili la'asad lava, and this will become revealed in the time to come. Wenn es wird mekuyim werden der Yehud, ish ve'ish yulad ba, as it says that a man and a man are born. Es wird sein ish mazriya tchila, and this is the idea that a man will be the first to the impetus, right? So even though we said that really, in order for it to be sustaining, the impetus has to begin, the interaction has to start from below. In the future, that will happen along with the Mila, with the advantage of when Hashem was the impetus for the interaction. The Mila versus Da and Hachodesh, meaning the Mila of Tazria and the Mila of Hachodesh, the Mila of the advantage of nature and the advantage of miracles. Was kommt mit der Mila, next, which comes from above, miracle. Und zusammen damit wird sein Vaish Yulad Boy, Yulad Zachar, and this will come in a way that these two things will exist together. The Mila versus Da in Tazria, Teva, is Rusta Latata, and will happen in a way that is revealed here as we start the impetus for the interaction, meaning a work from below, the service from down here, so that we are the ones that are able to actually start the whole process. Shkoyach. Appreciate y'all being on here.